G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today, I think we might have a look at, instead of the Leopard 2 A6, I said A6, A5, which is, it's a very strong tank. It's really good, and I absolutely adore it. I think it is the new boss along with the T80U. I haven't tried any of the other tanks. This is the only tank that I have tried, but I've also tried the helicopter with it, the Bo 105 Par 1A1 with the Hot 2 missiles, so it's the 9.7 helicopter. And overall, I am extremely impressed with the top tier German lineup. So the lineup I'm running right now is the 2A5, the 2K, and I'm using both of them to grind the 2A4. I've got the Hot, and I will eventually replace that with either the Gleitpanzer or the TAM, depending on which one I prefer. I've got the Gepard. I have the MiG-15 BIS, the German one, which I'll eventually equip with S-21s or bombs, depending on what I feel like at the time. And I've also got myself I've got the Bo, and that should be it. That should round out the lineup to about 6 vehicles. Now, of course, you don't have to take one particular vehicle. Oh, I've got the Flak Panzer Gepard, of course, but that's pretty much a given. I think right now the Germans have one of, if not the strongest lineups in the game, and I think I can say that quite confidently, considering that the Leopard 2A5 is such a joy to play. It's very, very tough. It's very hardy. It's sort of like the Abrams, but with a quicker reload. Well, with a slightly longer reload rather. Nothing quite satisfying as taking out a Challenger 1. Koala, please don't throw puppies off cliffs. It's bad for their health. Not the puppies. Not the puppies. Anyway, it's surprisingly easy to dispatch several vehicles at a single time just using that DM33. And obviously I try and keep the ammo rack low to keep that ammo stowage in the hull nice and low to minimize ammo racks. And I can just put the mobility to work along with the good turret armor. So this is practically the perfect tank for me because it's a very fast maneuvering tank. It's got a good gun, and it has decent turret armor, which means that I can work ridge lines, and I can use that gun depression against the Russian tanks. And for me, that in my opinion is the perfect tank. So I think the Leopard 2 A5 really lives up to that. And you can see here, I can just sort of surprise T-72s out of nowhere, coming over a hill and popping them in the carousel. That's the easiest way to kill any Russian tank. And now with the Abrams around and DM33 at your disposal, it's very, very easy, like surprisingly easy to deal with Abrams tanks now. You just have to shoot them in the turret ring, or you can, I believe, hit them in the lower front plate. And especially if they angle, you can go through that main drive wheel, and the DM33 will go absolutely nuts. I think currently the Leopard 2A5 is one of the strongest tanks in the game, just because of its combination of mobility, firepower, and armor. It's just surprisingly satisfying to not have to deal with a tank like the Challenger 1, where you're constantly trying to play on the defensive and you can't really play proactively, you can't really do much. It's a real shame, actually. The Challenger 1, from my experience, seems to be a really boring tank to play, or a real stressful tank to play. Now, obviously, you've got the Challenger 2 in play, and that thing is fairly strong. But, it's very, very situation dependent. And, of course, it has its main weak spots, which is the cannon breech and the mantlet, basically. Whereas the Leopard 2A5, from my experience, doesn't really have that much of a weak spot in that area. It's more the hull and more the turret ring. And I'd assume that the top of the turret is a bit susceptible to high explosive and HESH, but I'm yet to succumb to that, really. But for me, I think the ability to become aggressive when you need to, and the ability to play defensive when you can, is a really, really strong trait that not many other tanks share. Maybe the T80U, I'm yet to try it. The old M1 Abrams, especially before the 2A5 and before the T80U. I think the Leopard 2A5 is a really fun tank as well as a strong tank, because you can just go around and stomp and you can have a lot of fun. You can do practically whatever. It is versatile. And a versatile tank in War Thunder is a good tank. One-trick ponies don't get much love because, quite simply, they're not usable in every situation, whereas a tank like the Leopard 2A5 can somewhat brawl, it can flank, it can crest ridgelines, it can snipe, it has a laser rangefinder, and it has extremely good shells. And I would say comparable to the Challenger 2, which is kind of a shame because it's basically better than the Challenger 2 in almost every way at doing everything, which really sucks. The only thing that the 2A5 is really susceptible to is helicopters. And that's simply because the tank just doesn't have the elevation and it doesn't have a good secondary machine gun on the roof to deal with helicopters at range. You know, you can try and pop smoke, you can try and avoid them. And I tried to use the buildings, but obviously not good enough. As you can see, I'm just going to end up getting permafired. So eventually, I'm going to die in the Leopard 2A5, but that's not really a worry. I mean, rest in peace, and it's not fun to be taken out by a helicopter, but that's just the way that top tier seems to go. It's more lineups based rather than single tank based, and personally I'm fine with that. I'm just trying to sit in the tank long enough to either wait for someone to shoot it down, because I believe there's a T2 in the air, or about to get in the air, and that doesn't really come. Which is fine, because I could just move on to my other tanks in the lineup. I have a fairly strong lineup, and I can argue with some certainty that the German lineup currently is probably one of, if not the strongest in the whole game. I would definitely say it is one of the most enjoyable lineups in the whole game. Just because it's so well-rounded, it has really well-rounded vehicles, and it has really strong CAS, it has decent, anti-CAS, meaning the Gepard and the MiG-15 BIS. I'm not going to run the MiG-19S, I think. It may be good, but I think I'd prefer to run the BIS, just because it's a little bit more maneuverable, and the S-21s are beautiful. So, unfortunately for me, I get taken out by the Mi-35M. Understandable. I'm not terribly upset at it. I'm just, coming to terms with it. But that's no worry, because we have the Gepard, and instantly the Gepard is there to absolutely destroy that Mi-35. And of course he's flying low and slow, and it's not very easy to shoot down a helicopter at range. The bullets disappear after something like 2.5 kilometers. But when you get those shots on target, it is beautiful. And being an SPAA, you can pretty much stay on Overwatch for a good 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers, depending on your SPAA. You can provide Overwatch for the entire team. You can tell them when a helicopter's up. You can tell them what to look out for, where it's coming from. And I think this is a really important role. I love the new radar. I absolutely adore it. I think it is one of the best additions to War Thunder that has ever come in the last year. It is perfect. I think it is the perfect counter to any helicopter, because it's also a good counter for night battles, which I'll get to a little bit later. I'll try and make a separate video on that, but I'm struggling to get P61 footage, okay? So bear with me. Bear with me. I'm not that great in the P61. I'm a decent jet pilot. I'm a decent fighter pilot, but heavy fighters they're tough. But anyway, back to the gameplay. I'm just scanning around the skies, and there's that T2, and I can sort of communicate with him in the chat and tell him, hey, there's a helicopter up here. You can go and get him. He's in the north or in the northeast or northwest or whatever. I can mark them and I can range find them or whatever. It's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. Look at that. I'm locked onto him already. And there we go. There's the lead indicator. I don't actually get my shots on target in this case. Partially because the T2's already got a radar. But if you're flying something like the MiG-15 BIS or a Rado C3 or a 262 at this battle rating, which, you probably shouldn't, but the CL-13A and B don't really have radar, and that's one of the things that you can really use as a tool to help spot enemy helicopters. And that, in my opinion, is beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. You can use... working as a team isn't easy, but working as a team is really fruitful, and especially if you're playing with a squad, you will absolutely dominate with an SPAA radar. Radar-based SPAA, my mistake. It's just so much fun. And personally, being a person who loves playing the CAS and anti-CAS role, it's really satisfying. It's one of those things that I absolutely adore doing. It's just fun. And having this radar in the game and having the helicopters in the game makes for a really nice dynamic. And I can't wait to get the automatique and try that bad boy out. That'll be so beautiful. But having the ability to shoot down helicopters from long range and giving helicopters some way to die, basically, some hard counter, let's say, is really, really helpful. And it makes the game extremely well balanced. And that's what War Thunder should all be about. And it is beautiful. It's honestly really, really fun. And it has got me interested in playing top tier once again. Although the helicopters in top tier have been interesting, it does get a little bit stale when there's no challenge. You just sort of sit in your spawn, fire off your missiles, go back to base, rearm, rinse, repeat. But now we have the radar functionality, and as a little countermeasure, you get a little arrow in the top of or in the corner of your screen to let you know that you're being tracked by radar. I think that's really cool because that means that you can use terrain, you can utilize perhaps blind spots in the radar to get onto the enemy and to kill them, basically. You can see there's a Tunguska, and I'm actually out of range of it because the hot missiles don't reach as far, which is kind of cool, actually. It's another sort of hard counter, and Gaijin is starting to learn how to balance this new mechanic because, let's face it, there is no other game that has attempted to balance planes, tanks, helicopters, SPAA, armored personnel carriers, missile carriers, and all of these planes and tanks and whatnot in a single battle in this way. Of course, there are games that do use this functionality, and most of them I couldn't name them. But the way War Thunder has done it is kind of new. I don't recall seeing this anywhere previously, and having it sort of in its early stages last year wasn't very fun for people because it got really tedious. The helicopters had supremacy, and that's kind of understandable, especially considering that they're new. Gaijin's finding a way to balance them, but now it's starting to really come to fruition, and you can see it. It's starting to get really good, and I think the German tech tree is leading the way with this. Them and the Russians, closely followed by the Americans, and everyone else sort of lagging behind. Obviously, there are some gems that stand out, like the automatic and the Type 10. Type 90, my mistake. But for the moment, I'm really enjoying the Germans, and honestly, it's worth a try. Give it a go. You might enjoy it. Anyway, ladies and gents, take care, and I'll catch you next time. If you guys watched to the end of this video, comment German bias reigns supreme. See you guys.